He's our last, but definitely not least, speaker of Small Biz CX19. He is an internationally recognized customer service expert, keynote speaker, and frontline trainer, and he helps organizations get results by helping them think differently about customer service. He's a third generation entrepreneur, as he mentioned, so he really understands the impact that customer experience can have on the bottom line of a business. He's the author of Be Your Customer's Hero, the founder of the popular Customers That Stick blog, and he's also the co-host of Crack the Customer Code podcast. So we are really excited to have you, Adam. This is awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a cool event.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure. So I'm going to start out with my first question. You've done a lot of amazing work that has contributed to the shaping of the customer experience industry as we know it today. One of your most influential projects being your book, Be Your Customer's Hero. In part 3 of that work, you cover the 7 service triggers, and these are also known as the hot buttons that set customers off. What inspired you to develop the concept of the 7 service triggers?
So really it comes from my background in small business. So it's perfect to be speaking with a small business audience because it came from observation, seeing these things that seem to be repetitive feelings that customers would have, like being ignored, these types of things. And like looking at patterns in retail, in small business, and seeing, okay, what are the common things that tend to frustrate customers, that tend to create those negative emotions? Now, obviously, customers are human beings. Everybody has their own personal hot buttons, right? So there's a difference between sort of personal triggers and common triggers. And in the end, you're working on it over time, thinking about it. I distilled it down to 7 that I found were really prominent, that really were common across industries, across B2B versus B2C. Just you saw them pretty much everywhere. And eventually, even though I came up with the concept sort of out of my head, we did do some research to verify whether this was true or not. And we found that they were all very prominent.
Nice. So I know the concept of the 7 triggers is involved. So definitely everybody today, check out Adam's book. That'll give you some more insight because I know it's more than just a quick thing that we can talk about. But can you briefly go over what each of the 7 triggers is for our audience, just so they can get an idea?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're easy to distill quickly, but then digging in, of course, there's a lot of layers to it. So the first one is being ignored, which is, and they are all exactly what they sound like. I could just list them, but I'll give you a little color on each one. First one's being ignored, which is you don't pick up the phone.
Right.
The retail store that doesn't say hi, doesn't greet, doesn't acknowledge, right? Being ignored. Being abandoned is the next one. So being abandoned is very similar. We often talk about those from a technique perspective together, but the only difference is being abandoned, you've actually already had contact with the customer. So what's being abandoned? You never call back, right? You say you're going to go check on something and 7 days goes by. They feel abandoned, right? You don't follow up. Exactly. Next one is one of the biggest ones. And I actually have an entire keynote speech just dedicated to this one trigger. It's being hassled. Now, frustration, so much of what we know about emotion today, frustration is a key part of that. And I think we'll probably dig into that some in this conversation. So being hassled, all the different ways that, there's a lot of lenses we use this through friction and effort, right? Nowadays, some of these terms we use, they all end up resulting in a feeling of hassle, feeling of frustration. Next one is being faced with incompetence. And I had the hardest time with this one because I couldn't get it to get a nice little 2-word name, but it was more important to be accurate than have my little cute like speaker list that was perfect.
Right.
Being faced with incompetence is exactly that. When you go into a store or you call an agent on the phone and they don't know what they're doing. Now, the layer of that is sometimes people don't think that the person knows what they're doing, even though they do. They just don't have the knowledge or don't have the power. It's not incompetence. It's a perception of incompetence on the customer's part. But either way, whichever it is, whether it's actually, I don't know what I'm doing, this is my 2nd day and they didn't train me and they put me on the floor and now I'm trying to help you, or Yeah, I would love to help you with that. I know exactly what to do, other than I need the information from the warehouse and I don't have that information. Either way, it's the same for the customer. So we address it when we talk about sort of how to address that. We look at it as that feeling of incompetence. Next one is being shuffled. And that's what we all know. That's, oh, great. I just got to pass you to department X. Oh, no, sorry, we're not the right one. Department Y, we're going to send you to, they're going to take care of you. No, sorry, that's not happening either. Right. That's being shuffled, being pushed around from email to, to department, to the other business unit, whatever it may be. Being powerless. Now, this is a big one because it's a little counterintuitive nowadays. And the reason it's counterintuitive, and I mentioned this in the book, is there's a lot of talk nowadays about how empowered customers are with the social media and the fact that they can, take anybody to task publicly. That doesn't take into account, it's very true, but it doesn't take into account sort of the other side of it, which is in a lot of industries, companies are getting bigger and there are fewer options. So depending on the industry, people feel trapped. They feel powerless. They feel like I can't move. Banking's a perfect example. And there are good banks and there are bad banks, but it's a pain to switch, right? You have to be really mad, right?
It's a huge hassle to do that. Yes.
But there's a million options, right? It's not like it's a monopoly like the cable companies back in my day. I mean, you've got a million banks you can go to, but the switching costs are so high that they feel trapped. So that's powerless. And it's a terrible feeling for a customer to have. And when we talk about emotion, no one, right? We all want to feel in control of our own destiny. And the last one, and we can probably dig into this later some, is being disrespected. And it's just what it sounds like. And there's a lot of ways you can make customers feel disrespected. And once you do, nothing else matters. I will say that. So those are the 7 service triggers.
Awesome. It was interesting to hear you break them down. So you've spent years working with customers and frontline employees. Of the 7 triggers, are there some of the triggers that you feel occur more frequently than others, that you see more commonly among businesses that have customer service issues?
Yeah, for sure. And this was where it was interesting after developing the triggers, to do the research a few years later to see, okay, well, my gut is this is pretty common. This is more common. And to see which ones were the most common. So the most common, and they're all within a very narrow range. Let me be clear. It's not like, 86% of people have this and 5% of people have this. The lowest of any trigger was almost 2/3. We said, have you ever experienced this? I don't remember the exact phrasing of the question, but essentially, have you ever experienced this? And we defined what it was: being hassled, being ignored, being abandoned. The lowest one was being powerless, but that was still almost 2/3 of the people. The highest one was being ignored. That was 86%. Do we think we greet people well or answer the phone quickly or respond to emails? Being ignored is the most common.
That does happen a lot, though. I can't count the amount of times I've gone into a restaurant and no one's at the hostess podium. And you see about 1 million servers or bus people or whoever walk by, and they see you standing there and no one says anything.
They don't acknowledge you, right?
Yeah. That is a huge one. I would have to agree.
So here's the interesting one. I'll throw this out for you. The number 2 one was the one that's like ignored. I expected that to rank pretty high. I wasn't shocked that was number 1. The number 2 one was being faced with incompetence. That I was really surprised by. So people really don't feel, which, we do customer service training. So that's a great number for us, because we're like, hey, people really don't think your team knows what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, that was surprising that incompetence was the next one.
Yeah, that is surprising. I wouldn't have pegged that one. So the 7 service triggers imply that customers' emotions have a major impact on the customer experience. What role do customers' emotions play in the grand scheme of the entire experience, and how can the service triggers define a customer's journey?
So emotions are sort of the ball game, and particularly if there's a strong emotion involved in an experience, that emotion tends to dictate how someone feels about the experience. There's a thing called the peak end rule, which simply the most intense emotion someone feels tends to dictate their memory of the experience, which dictates how they feel. Right. So emotion is incredibly powerful. And there was one study that Temkin group did a couple of years back. It was pretty interesting. They compared groups that had a positive emotional experience versus a negative emotional experience. And the stats were like mind blowing. Somebody that had positive emotional versus negative emotional were 15 times more likely to recommend. So that's net promoter, right? NPS. 15 times, that's 1500%. 8 times more likely to trust, 6 times more likely to forgive. Now, when we talk about reactive customer service, right, we talk about having to resolve an issue. One of the things is, are they going to forgive you? I mean, there's all these techniques we teach for how to do that, how to have those conversations, how to resolve an issue well. But if somebody's 6 times more likely to forgive you, how much easier is that job?
It's a lot easier.
Exactly. That's the power, right? And that's the power of customer emotion. So when we look at how do the triggers impact that, the triggers are both a proactive and a reactive strategy. Proactive is we want to prevent the triggers. We don't want them to feel ignored. We don't want them to feel abandoned. Reactive is, okay, it's going to happen, right? The bigger the organization, particularly, it's going to happen sometimes. Some people are going to get shuffled. So how do we react? What do we do when that trigger gets set off? From the standpoint of emotion, we're talking about preventing negative emotion.
Right.
We're talking about not creating that peak of hassle, that sort of peak emotion that comes from hassle or from being disrespected. Because I talked about that research we did on being disrespected. Here's what was interesting. So we asked, how often does this occur? We looked at a lot of dimensions of it, but one of the things we asked was which one's most important? Which one is truly a hot button for you? Being disrespected was as big as the other 6 combined.
Oh, wow.
That's how powerful that is. It's one of the less frequent ones that people feel disrespected, but it's the most powerful one. Meaning once it happens, it's a ball game. If you don't address how they feel, it doesn't matter if you resolve the issue. It doesn't matter if you get the product to them or fix the service or change the code they need. If they feel disrespected, you have to resolve that, or you don't have a customer anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Which that's probably hard to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of techniques for it, but it takes skill and it takes the right mix of people. It's going to also take the customer. Not every customer can be saved if you really, something's happened to make them feel disrespected. But there's certainly a lot of techniques you can use to, win the numbers, so to speak, and get a lot of them back. Right.
So understanding the 7 triggers is extremely important for any team that wants to strive to provide superior customer service. Can you provide us with some examples of how to use the service triggers for creating a better customer experience design?
Right. So when we're looking at designing the touch points, you look at each touch point, you look at the most important touch points, what we call pressure points, what a lot of people call moments of truth. And you can look at them through the lens of the triggers in a lot of cases. So when you look at the greeting, we're immediately looking at ignored. What is our greeting? How fast do we answer the phone? How fast do we respond to a web inquiry? All of that is part of design. What are our service standards? And you can look at it, we use the triggers to sort of help inform that lens of, we don't want the customer to feel ignored. So how do we design the service standards, like around our greeting and so forth around that? Same thing with abandon. What's our callback time if we have to go check on something? How do we set expectations for that time frame? How do we set expectations so we can exceed that time frame? That's trying to making sure that feeling of abandonment is not part of the customer journey. Right. Hassle is the entire journey from beginning to end. You are looking, like I said, I have a whole keynote on hassle because it's so important. And it is it's getting more important every year because people are more rushed and more stressed every year that goes by.
Right.
So that hassle, people are less tolerant of it. They're so used to instant gratification. They're so used to everything being easy. And sometimes people in my field call it the Amazon effect, that just ability to click a button and have everything you want immediately. So hassle, you're looking at the whole journey all the time. How do we make it easier? How do we make ourselves easy to do business with?
Right.
And then disrespected, I'll take the hard one. I don't want to do all 7, but I'm sure you don't want me to do all 7, but
no, I would love you to, but
right. So disrespected is interesting because how do you handle disrespect?
Right.
It's training. because I mean, you can make someone be disrespected from a process. In fact, being abandoned can lead to disrespect, right?
Right.
If you continue to not follow up with somebody and time over time, particularly in a relationship like a business to business or something like that,
Right.
well, eventually that can turn into a feeling of disrespect. Like they just don't care about me. So with disrespect, it's training, it's understanding one, how to talk to people in the beginning with and not say the wrong things, and how to speak with people in a emotionally charged reactive situation where it's really easy to not say the best thing, to not use the most effective language.
Right. That makes sense. So it's really all about putting a plan in place and having a certain standard. It seems like proactively having a set of steps that you follow and a standard that you follow for service. Like it kind of reminds me of, I constantly come back to, I used to work for Cracker Barrel way back. I used
All
to
right.
be a server. And a couple of the things that I was just thinking about that you were talking about I guess it falls under abandonment and also making it less of a hassle. One of the standards we had, it was called 1 minute check back, check down.
Okay.
So 1 minute after you delivered their food, you were expected to check. That was the standard. You were expected to check back within 1 minute,
Perfect.
make sure that everything was to their liking, their steak was cooked correctly. And then you would say, I'm not rushing you. This is just for your convenience, but I'm going to leave your check here with you and I'm going to come back to check on you as well. And then that way, when they were ready, if they were ready before you had come back, they could go right to the register and check out if they wanted to.
See,
So,
that's fantastic. Well, that's a great example, Jessica, because I mean, what are you doing? What is one of the most frustrating things in a restaurant? You're waiting for your food, it comes, it's wrong, and you're sitting there while it all gets cold, waiting on your server, your friends or your family are eating, and that 1 minute, make sure you don't sit there for too long.
right.
So yeah, that's awesome. I never knew that.
Definitely made me, yep. 1 minute, check back, check down. I'll never forget it.
That's
I waitressed there for 7 years.
oh, wow.
So I won't forget that. um, so what strategies or examples can you share with our audience that they can use to proactively prevent the triggers from occurring?
Okay, so one of them will do ignored and abandoned. It's a twofer because this technique really works sort of to help with both. It's two techniques that we combine called assuring accountability and buy-in for response time. So assuring accountability is something that so many people don't use or are afraid to use. And what assuring accountability is, hey, Jessica, I don't have the answer for you right now, but I'm going to look into that with our accounting department. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get them. Usually I can get them in 24 hours, but not all the time. But I can promise you, I'm going to get to the bottom of this for you. And even if I don't have an answer, I will make sure I get back with you. Is that okay? Right. And that's it. That's assuring accountability. And the reason people sort of resist it is because they don't want to be responsible for the answer. And the key to assuring accountability is not taking accountability for the answer, because often if this is when you're having to disconnect, you're having to check with someone else or having to research something. It's assuring accountability for the communication, for making sure you're going to keep them in the loop. That's how they don't feel abandoned. They don't feel that fear when you're breaking off. There's actually an interesting stat about call transfers where there's a spike in fear, literally fear, when call transfers go up in a contact center. People do not like being disconnected when they finally get somebody. So that's assuring accountability. And buy-in for response time is what I would have added on to the end of that, which is, would it be okay if I get back to you by 5 o'clock tomorrow? Would it be okay if I get back with you by the end of the week? And what that does is it gives them a firm time frame, but it gets them to buy into it by just simply asking that question. And so many people don't do this. And when you assure, when you combine those two, you assure accountability, say, I'm going to take ownership of this. I'm going to make sure you're taken care of. If I can't find the answer, I'll get back with you. Is it okay if I get back with you by 5 o'clock tomorrow? Imagine if you're the customer and you hear that. Are you worried?
Great. I think maybe I heard that like maybe once in my life, and I can't even remember when it was.
Exactly. And it's so easy to do because you don't, the fear is, I mean, one, people just don't know the language, haven't been trained on it, but the fear is, I don't know when I'm going to get the answer. Well, you're not going to assure accountability for actually getting it. You're going to assure accountability for keeping them in the loop, making sure that you're on top of it. It's not going to get dropped. It's not going to get lost, as opposed to, well, I'll check on that for you. Thank you so much. I'll be in touch.
Nice.
When, how, why, who's getting back, right?
Exactly.
Right. So you're eliminating all this doubt and uncertainty. And that's what the key is. I mean, all these triggers are about our instinctual responses and fear and concern and all that. All right. So hassle, that's another one, because I love hassle. I hate hassle, but I love talking about hassle because there's so much of it and it's so easy to fix in so many cases. So I'm going to give you like 3 quick things you can do to address hassle proactively. First thing is the OG of hassle, the sort of core source of most hassle, is policies and procedures that we have put into place. Half of them have been sitting around for years and aren't even relevant anymore. Right. And the bigger the organization, the more this is true. First thing is you've got to purge your policies. You've got to look through all your policies and your processes from a customer-centric lens, from an outside-in lens, and really say, why do we do this? How important is it? And is the hassle we're putting the customer through worth it?
Right. How would you feel if you had to deal with it?
Well, exactly. How would you, I mean, you've got to walk through your experience. I mean, we do journey mapping, we do all these things. You've got to walk through your experience, and then also, of course, talk to your customers about how they feel about it. But when you're looking at policies and procedures, so often the value to the organization is so small compared to the hassle to the customer. Now, there are some things where you're going to do it no matter what. Like it's too important, like a liability release. If you have like an ice skating rink, I don't know why that came to mind, right? I mean, you're going to have people sign a release if they're going to go get on little thin pieces of metal and play around on ice. Okay, that's going to happen, right? You're not going to eliminate that step. So when you do have policies and processes, when you have these things that you have to keep, right? The legal team makes you keep it, or it's regulation. I just got through working with a Fortune 100 company, and they do industrial coatings and things, and they have all kinds of regulations they have to work around. So the question is, okay, if we have to do it, how do we make it easier? Can we pre-fill out forms? Can we have an FAQ that helps walk people through steps? What can we do to make it as painless as possible if we have to keep it in? Right. That makes sense? That totally makes sense. And the other thing in technology is like the two-faced, the Janus, if you have an obscure reference of hassle, because technology is both one of the best things for reducing hassle and is one of the greatest creators of hassle. And you've always got to look at your tech and ask which one it is and how can we not make it the second one? Because so often the forms don't work, the APIs don't talk to each other, right? There's all kinds of challenges. You're in a tech business, right? I mean, technology can be such an amazing way to reduce hassle. Obviously, Amazon has figured this out to a degree that we couldn't even conceive of a decade ago, right? But it's also, we know when we go to the websites and we can't find anything, or they don't work, or it loads slow, or it looks terrible on mobile, all the way to things don't integrate. It's a huge source of hassle. So you've always got to be looking at the tech from both lenses. Yeah, we're spoiled now. We expect the Amazon experience everywhere we go. Exactly. And you need any more? I don't know how we're doing on time. We're doing okay. Right now, if anybody has any questions, you can ask them and we'll ask him. We'll ask Adam. If not, I do have one more that I have for you, if that's all right. Oh, of course, I'm here for you. So whether people like to admit it or not, we kind of talked about this before. Everybody has a favorite team, or a favorite color, or a favorite restaurant. Which of the 7 service triggers is your favorite challenge to tackle with a client and help them tackle and prevent? Disrespected. It's by far the hardest. It's you're talking about a very deep-seated feeling, emotional feeling The most powerful things we have are our connections with other humans. To me, the most powerful parts of most experiences are the human parts.
Right.
They're also the most difficult when they go wrong.
Right.
Because here's the example I give is, we're not built for reactive customer service. Okay. We are not designed evolutionarily to get aggression, to take, get yelled at, screamed at, cussed at, and go, well, thank you, ma'am. I'd really love to help you with that. Right? That's not a natural reaction. That takes training and language and skills. And disrespected is the height of that. I mean, that's when somebody, I mean, you know how powerful that is. And you saw just from the data that it was more powerful than the, pretty much the other 6 triggers combined. So to me, that's my favorite, because it's the one that people just like, I don't even know where to start. And there are things you can do. There are ways to approach it, that techniques that we teach in training that certainly can help you win a lot of them, right?
Right.
You won't win them all when you're talking about being disrespected, but you can win a lot of them.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. I know you've got a busy schedule, and we really appreciate you coming on and talking with us for the end of Small Biz CX. I just want to let our audience know Adam was kind enough to provide us with the infographic for what are the 7 service triggers. We are going to be sending up a follow-up email on Monday to all attendees to provide them with any resources that we've gathered today. And I just want to thank you again so much. We really enjoyed having you on, and we appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you, Jessica. I really appreciate it. This was fun, and I love talking about the triggers. And thanks to all y'all who are listening.
Thank you. I hope you have a great night.
You too. Thanks, Jess. Take care.
Bye.